Good day, class. This is our this is a continuation of our lecture. This previous lecture. Now we will tackle on the continuation of the farm management types in terms of looking at the farm systems and its various activities and budgets. So this time we will look at the farm-based measures of performance. Okay, this farm, the farm budget-based measures of performance are actually measures of performance that is, of course, derivable within the state budget statement or from the details of the various financial statements generated from the farm plan and budgets. So there are four measures of enterprise performance. You have uh, net returns or enterprise net returns, enterprise gross margin, and operational gross margin also, or activity or activity price. And the other one is you have the cost of production. If you compute for the cost of production, then of course you can very well see that. And then there is also what we call as the uh, cost and return analysis or something like that. So these are the various types of budget-based performance. In other words, if you have a planning budget, okay, the planning budget, you go for the computation of this um, budget-based performance at least before implementation. You can already, or before while performing or while implementing, you are already anticipating in terms of how much are you going to get in in the uh, in the event of successful farm operation. Okay, so first, here the first requirement is for being to be able to appreciate the utility or the usefulness of budget based performance indicators or measures. We need to understand about farm planning and budgeting. Okay, farm planning and budgeting. This is one of the foundations to any successful business planning. Okay, Radyo plano should be considered by farmer as part of his farming activities. There are various types of, or ways by which farmers will make a farm plan. There is what we call as the calendar type. There is also the, uh, like for example, well documented type or itemized type. And there is also what we call as a computer-based planning or the digital planning. The calendar type, to aras kalendaryo, gisuot-suwat ang mga schedules, no? To aras kalendaryo ang the different activities. So, in other words, kung mawala ang kalendaryo, mawala ang imong plano. Okay? There is also what we call as trying to make some notes, but it would always be profitable if you have really a systematic way of planning and budgeting, either using a specific tool or using an automated or computer assisted planning tool. No, this is an activity. No, this is an activity by which we uh, say, for example, look at the future from the vantage point of the present. Okay, we look at the future from the vantage point of the present. Now, features of farm plan. It looks ahead to better opportunities. Doon na, tatada kay farm plan and budget. And then another thing is, it considers and explores alternatives because you are going to measure performance, so you can make some combination in terms of which particular combination or practice can give you a better result in the future. At least you can already correct errors while it is still under or before implementation. Now, what are the objectives of farm plan and budget? Of course, to estimate possible changes, to show relative advantage, and to show estimates for seasonal and total requirements for labor, capital, and other resources. So these are the common objectives of farm plan and budget. To be able to see the future now, okay, to be able to simulate the future now so that you can very well anticipate and prepare for whatever eventualities there is existing in the future. Now, definition and comparison, we have planning. What is the difference between planning and farm planning? Planning is a process of choosing alternatives, co- uh, alternative alternative course of action at a given time in the future. Okay, so you are trying to look the future now. Now, farm planning is a process of considering what crops to grow and what quantity of other inputs to use. It includes animals, it includes machineries, buildings, etc. No? So, applying the framework or the principles of planning in agriculture. What is budgeting also? Budgeting is the process of determining requirements and allocating resource to different activities. That means to say, like for example, assigning people to a specific task or allocating land areas to specific tasks, allocating inputs to various activities and processes. So it's budgeting. Budgeting is a process of estimating farm inputs, expenses, outputs, production, etc. The main purpose of budgeting is to compare profitability at different kinds of enterprise. The plan provides the basis. The budget can be formulated without the budget, for the budget, but can be formulated without a budget. Pwede ka mag-plan, walay budget, plano pa man. A plan is formulated and subsequently budgeted, but a budget cannot be done without a plan. Okay? That's why planning and budgeting intertwine together because they support each other. The plan can will serve as a rail track for budgeting, and budgeting will base its really processes the detailed steps of the processes will always be based upon the plan. Okay, the overall use is the basis for carrying out organizations and operations of the farm, and you have some specific use, which is rather obvious. No, the uses of farm plan and budget. Now, there are also data requirements for farm plan and budget. Actual experience, farm demonstration, results of various experimental stations, extension workers, and technical field representatives. So you get data from all these different sources. Actual experience, or maybe from published materials, from consultation with technology developers, etc. Okay. Now, what are the operational steps in farm planning and budgeting? Where one is setting up the objectives. Of course, what is your objective? For profit, for subsistence, for whatever, food security, food sufficiency, whatever, or to increase market share. No? And then after having the objectives, we'll take a stock of reports. What do you have at hand in terms of the factors of production, land, labor, capital, or what have you? What else? What do you have? So that if what you have can be budgeted and still achieve the desired goal, then you don't need to have external inputs. But if there's no available but very essential, you know exactly how much to acquire externally. Okay. Now another number three is review and analyzing alternatives. Okay, and then decide which alternatives and summarize the result. Okay, so that means we really have to, in other words, planning and budgeting is a tandem, which is a proactive instrument in making the future, simulating the future to happen now. Okay, to happen now. What is the result? So there is what we call as farm budget. Okay, so farm budget defines a detailed plan in the use of farm resources. It is a statement of the estimated cost and return of the farm. It is a written physical and financial plan. Okay, written physical and financial plan. It is a device for production analysis, also a farm budget. Analyze carbon productivity, efficiency, cost effective or cost efficiency, and also uh, cost and return, net income, etc. No, if you have the farm budget, that will come very well, nice and handy. Types of farm budget. Okay, there are types of farm budget. We have the partial, the complete, and the cash flow budget. Okay, there are several types of farm budgets, but only three types will be considered in our class or in our course. First is the partial budget. What is a partial budget? From the word partial, meaning to say it only touches a certain part of the operation, concerned with the amount and kinds of resource to use. Okay, and then considers only expenses and returns that are part of the change under consideration. For example, harvesting at 1 month old, say, pitchay, comparing it with harvesting at maybe 35 days or 40 days old nga pitchay. Or harvesting harvesting broiler 1 month old versus 35 days old, something like that. Okay, so these are partial budget tool, very important. The term partial budget indicates that its partial budgeting is concerned with evaluation only of the selected parts of the production system, only parts of the process of the enterprise. Now, in the use of partial budget compares two different cultural practice. Okay, systems of farming, two different. No, you need to use partial budget for this. The use of animal versus use of tractor for land preparation, which is better? Okay, transplanting versus direct seeding, which is better? Okay, hand weeding versus using herbicides or weedicide, pesticide application versus integrated pest management. Okay, manual threshing versus use of mechanical dryer, and so on and so forth, and such and so. Okay, so this is an existing practice that you need to really contain or so let's say assess or so let's say analyze. No, which one is better? Now, number two, the partial budget helps to determine the profitability of varying input application. 3 bags versus 4 bags, 2 pints versus 3 pints, 10 versus 15 days labor Mondays to work in the farm. Asa may mas maayo? Napo ka mo hire or 5 ka mo or 15 ka mo hire? Okay? Or asay mas maayo? Direct seeding. 2 ka-bans na akong gamiton or 3 ka-bans? And so on. No? So on. Unsa pa ubang comparison. Now, in the third use of partial budget is it enables the farmer to choose the plan which gives a better result. For example, buying versus renting, feeding the poultry with homemade feeds versus commercial feeds, pump versus gravity source of power. Okay, something like that. So number four helps to determine the best age of the market crops. Okay, so we are already mentioning some of these various changes. Marketing young coconuts versus tuba, marketing young corn versus matured corn, selling fresh over processed products or something like that. So these are various changes that you are particularly thinking, but partial budgeting is very powerful to do this. Now, in the information needed in a partial budgeting. One is prices of both inputs and outputs are known. The other one, added cost and return due to the practice or resource plan can be determined also. Reduced cost and returns due to the practice can also be known. So previous knowledge of new and old practice and their cost requirements should be there also. Yeah. For example, mechanized versus non-mechanized. Kinalan kibalo ka. What are the cost and return like details of a mechanized and the non-mechanized para naka basis of comparison. The partial budget is composed of the following. These are the components of partial budget. Information about added cost, information about reduced cost, and then information about added returns, and information about reduced cost. So you combine now the revenue generating practice and then combine also the cost generating practice and get the difference between the revenue and the cost. Okay? The formula for partial budget is you have the revenue account less the cost account. What are the revenue accounts? Reduced cost, okay, and added return. While in cost accounts, you have reduced return, no, reduced return, and added cost. Combine them together, get the difference. The net effect is, if it is positive, then it is favorable. Okay? Yeah, it is favorable. This is the setup of a partial budget. Okay? You have added cost and added reduced return, added returns and reduced cost. Then is get the difference and then the estimated change. B minus A is actually the result of a partial budget. So these are the example. This is an example of a partial budget of marketing 4-week-old or 5-week-old nga broilers. Okay? So mao ni ang mga added cost, mao ni ang reduced return, mao ni ang added returns and reduced cost. Okay? You have to combine, you have to really understand that what are the components between the two nga mo generate og kuan, mo generate og like this accounts, added cost. If you market 5 weeks old, so na kay added cost of feeds, added cost of labor, electricity, etc. And then what about the reduced return? Wala siya. Reduced return kay 5-week-old man. And then if you kanang ay grow until 5 weeks, you have an added return. Okay? You have an added return. But reduced cost is not possible because you are extending the production cycle. So these are the accompanying information in order to compute all those. Feed consumption is 0.59 kilograms per bird for the 4th week, and the week and 0.64 kilograms per bird at the 5th week. Okay, so to compute for the what? To compute for the added added cost and so on. Napay ubang data dire, no? Now, farm planning and budgeting. If you simplify the procedure for partial budgeting, you will really notice how we get all these values, no? And I would like you to recompute them, no, recompute them. Now, farm planning and budgeting. So it is the series of partial budgets can complete planning and budgeting. Sometimes necessary to compare successive budget. The next item is complete budgeting. Okay, complete farm plan and budget. When we say complete, that means the entire farm. It summarizes all expenses returned so that the net figure indicates the performance of the entire farm. Okay? Performance of the entire farm. So this will determine whether the farmer has a capacity to pay their loan. Okay? Ang partial budget, it's not able to do that because it only provides you an idea in terms of which one is beneficial, which of the two practice adapted is beneficial, considering their operating expenses. Wala may fixed cost ato, no? Wala may fixed cost. Now, contents of a farm plan and budget. Inventory, personnel organization, calendar operation, and so on. So it's really entire, complete farm plan. Now, the schedule of expected production, summary budget, indicators of success. So, ang tumoy ana, following all these 8 steps, 1 to 7 is, these are all tables, computation, no? And the last figure is indicators of success where you can compute the net returns, gross margin, etc. Okay? So, you have also the other type of budget is cash flow budget. It actually allocates and determines the cash needed throughout the entire stretch of the operation. Cash flow budget very important because that will just determine when the cash item is needed for the operation, so that we can very well schedule and determine whether there is enough cash that will sustain the operation at a particular time. Short-term cash flow budget is normally done within the year, and long-term cash flow budget normally done bi-monthly or bi-annual. Considerations in the preparing the budget. It is important to establish clearly what the comparison should show before budgeting began. Okay? Know how much income together. Determine pila imong targeted income. The third rule is closely related to the second, that is preparing budget including the meaningful information. Okay? So, being able to communicate. The farm plan and budget lies on the nature of farming business. Okay? Once sa nature ng farm plan and budget, mukuhir ang imong business, mukuhir ang imong farm plan and budget. If it is multi-period because it's livestock, then it's going to be multi-period. If it is perennial because you are growing long-duration crops, then that entire farm plan will stretch up to that particular cycle. Okay? But if you are growing annuals, kind of short-duration crops, so that means your farm plan is good for like few months or 1 year only. No? So, budget-based measures of performance. These are all formulas, no? These are all formulas. Net return, it's simply you have what? Net return is TGR, which is actually total gross return minus total cost. That is net return. Total gross return. Kuha mo, add mo tanan. And then minus total cost, that is the total net returns or net returns. Now, what net returns? How do we consider the net returns? The net returns consist of two components: total variable cost and total fixed cost. So you add the total variable cost and you add the total fixed cost, deduct that to the gross return. Now the variable costs are those that inputted in terms of amounts which change proportionately in size or level within a particular cycle. While fixed yun na sila within that particular cycle or many cycles within that for that matter. Now the gross margin, one measure also, most appropriate measure of enterprise performance if purpose is an operational rather than accounting. No? To make rapid comparison among 3, 4, or 5 enterprises with a view of expanding some of the contract, some or contracting others. No? Now, gross margin is actually total gross return minus, take note, gross margin is total gross return minus variable cost. I-include na nga mo ang fixed cost, total net return na siya. Okay? So that is the difference. Operational gross margin. Operational, that means total gross return minus direct cost. Okay? Direct cost. Labor, fertilizer, direct cost man eh. Pero nga nagmayon ka nga, kanang na ay, like for example, you hire somebody to canvas, for example, your inputs. Canvassing is not a direct labor or direct cost. Okay? Direct cost of an enterprise are all costs directly associated with the enterprise. Okay? Directly associated with the caretaker, ka mga inana, no? Direct cost of an enterprise thus consists of the variable cost plus some proportion of the farm's fixed cost. Okay? Take note of the definition. Now, the whole farm plan is the structural or parallel of an enterprise activity budget. There is only one change. Okay? Those fixed costs which cannot be logically assigned to any activity are now included in the whole farm fixed and common overhead cost. Included as a whole farm fixed or common or overhead cost. Whole farm plan, whole farm budget is these are overhead costs that can be both fixed and operational. Okay. The relevant criterion is in farm plan, in whole farm plan, is that they cannot be logically charged against specific activities or enterprise. Like for example, this one, home farm evaluation. Okay, you have the gross return, the variable cost, overhead, and so on. No, so these are the budget-based measures. Mura glass na nga table pananglitan. So you have gross return. Okay, you have the gross return is the total ramanitanan diha. Okay, the total. And then variable cost, you have total po mga variable cost mo po na. The fixed cost and so on. Now, the net returns is gross return minus total cost. Okay, total cost. Gross return minus total cost. So that means total nimo ang tanang cost from ginger to soybean, and then i minus nimo sa gross return, no? Gross return. Household or kasi net returns. Actually, imong net return diri siya i-add nimo diri equals makita nimo among net return, no? So imo ra nang gi-minus ang entire cost minus entire cost sa total gross return. Okay? You have total cost 42 minus 60,000 minus 42. Okay? Mao nang nakay mga, say for example, you see the formula here, gross return minus total cost. This is the total cost. This is the gross return. So you have net return is 18,586. Okay, you just follow the formula and then you will not get lost. So whole farm farm budget are used primarily as end of the year accounting, not operational cost, except when used to a project of whole farm performance over several years. Ang whole farm plan and budget is only used for 1 year. Tanaw na to ang performance. Provided, however, ng imong production cycle ends within a year. Okay? However, kung ang imong operation mo stretch lang pila ka tuig, then your whole farm plan and budget will also stretch in that fashion of time period. Okay? So, that is the, a quick articulation and also quick tour on what do you mean by farm plan and budgeting, farm planning and budgeting. So in farm plan, you have, and also the measure of budget-based performance analysis. In farm planning and budgeting, you have 3 types of budget: the partial budget, the complete budget, and the cash flow budget. Be sure to distinguish the differences between the 3: partial, complete, and cash flow budget. Okay? And you also have some of the performance or budget-based performance indicators or analysis. Gross return, total cost, net returns, and so on. No? So just follow the formula and then you will not get lost. Actually, guys, this is the end of the lecture today, and we will continue with our lecture in the next succeeding class that we will have. Okay? Thank you, and we will see each other in the next session. Okay, we will. No, we will. You should wait for the recorded material to be uploaded sa Moodle Classroom, and of course, this particular part of the lecture will also be uploaded together with the previous lecture in your Moodle Classroom. So, with that note, thank you and have a good day and God bless.